going on, guys? Brent with West Coast Bassin. So welcome back to the channel. I'm out here in the garage where I usually am when I'm had a long day after working. So today we're gonna kind of talk about, I have a little bit of footage from it, but unfortunately the best part of our entire tournament this past weekend for the Snag Proof Open was not captured. Unfortunately, the way that the last day went, the camera it never came out. So we're gonna get right into it. So we're gonna start off Saturday. We left town. We live about hour and 45, 2 hours from Russo's Marina. And so we left town around 5:40. I was towing the boat. My dad was following me. He ended up having to go to work later on after the weekend. So basically, he took off, went straight down south to work for Monday. So anyway, so we get down there. We're early. We went and checked in, got our boat slip, went and actually put the boat in, and then we waited. So the way the Snag Proof works is you blast off at 11 a.m. and then you fish until, like, we blasted off at 11:22, somewhere around there. We were in the back of the pack. We ended up fishing until 7 p.m. It was a long day for us. So we waited, and I got a little bit on video there, got some footage of the boats, as you guys saw, and I actually really felt good about this tournament. Going into it, we didn't pre-fish. We have not fished the Delta all year. So usually, past years, if we've done this, the Delta's usually still the Delta. You don't have loss of weed growth in areas. You don't have a lot of beat up shorelines. And that's what we were faced with. We ran into a lot of areas that we're comfortable sitting down in and fishing out. And it turned out that the weeds, we don't know if they were sprayed or if the Delta is changing and they didn't grow in that area. I know a lot of guys that we've talked to, they said the same thing. They were faced with a lot of changes that they weren't foreseeing. So we scrambled. And it's amazing, I didn't get any of the 3 fish that we actually boated that were keepers on film. Unfortunately, the first day either. So, you know, I played some clips for you guys to kind of show you that, you know, we were really trying. So it went in, we were probably 3.5 hours into our first day, and we ended up getting one out of the back of the boat. My dad hooked a decent, just under 2-pound fish. I say it's decent because that was the only fish that we had at that time. I think I'd caught one, or he had caught one that was like 10.5 inches, and we were like, can we stretch him? So we went basically the rest of the day up until about an hour until we were having to go back in before we caught our second fish. I ended up catching our second fish in an area that we know very well. It's got a lot of current that flows through it. So that's why we ended up there. We had a lot of slack water that we weren't having any production out of. So we moved to something that has moving water on it. And that's the great thing about the Delta is if you're not getting any productivity out of one area, the way that we fish it, we flip it 180 degrees and we go and try to fish the opposite. We ended up picking up one that was around 1.5 pound range, so it helped us out. And we kind of just went through the motions of trying to get that third fish. We ended up with our third fish at 6:45, 6:50-ish. I wish the cameras were on for this one. My dad hooked it in the middle of the tules. The boat was actually positioned in sparse tules, so I'm trying to run the trolling motor with my hand while he's trying to get this fish up out of the tules. We had no idea how big the fish actually was. As we were approaching it, I had the net down, and I could see the fish in the water. I knew it wasn't a very big one, but I knew that it looked about to be 13 inches. So I kept the trolling motor on high, and just as we about got there and I was going to scoop, the fish pops out of the tules and he keeps reeling, brings it up, slaps me in the face with it, and the fish actually pops off the hook. And mind you, I'm up on the front of the boat trying to be as close to the fish as I can. So luckily it bounced inside of the boat, and my dad's 6'5", goes full flail, dives for the fish. The fish lands back on the pad where our rod tips usually go by our consoles, and I slung the net around to make sure that if it flopped, it wouldn't fly back into the water. So it was a fiasco, to say the least, on just that last small fish. We went into the weigh-in, and I was asked how the day went, and I told him I do not want to talk about it. It was one of those days, and of course I was being sarcastic. I knew it was just one of those days of you know, you have those days. And we had contemplated actually packing it in. A lot of guys had caught that 5-pound mark. We didn't know where we fell in the pack. We really just wanted to get to the hotel, get some food, and kind of go to sleep. So fast forward to the next morning, we get up at 3:30. We go get some coffee. We get, you know, our snacks and stuff for the day, and we get to the ramp. I actually dropped him off over at the boat because the boat's further down the way at Bethel Harbor, and I went to go hook up the trailer, hooked the trailer up, got the truck parked, met him down there, and we kind of just sat there quietly. Both of us were kind of going through the motions. We were, you know, laughing, joking, and then we kind of got quiet, and when they started blasting us off, we were in the first flight. We went to an area that it's called Columbia Cut. That's an area we all know very well. I've caught a lot of big fish out of it. He's caught a lot of big fish out of it, and it's got good movement of water. So after speaking with some of the guys the night before, and actually a friend of mine that was out on the Delta, he and the guys that we talked to had all talked about this poppin' frog. And I had one tied on. I wasn't using it though. I don't have a lot of confidence in it. I haven't used it in a long time. But for some reason they were getting bigger bites, or they were getting a lot more bites. Now the guy had said, oh, you know, we got about 30 1.5 pounders. And so my dad and I are like, wow, you know, if you're getting that kind of luck with that, maybe, you know, we'll just try and we'll change. So I was the one who decided I'm gonna keep the poppin' frog that's tied onto my rod, and I'm just gonna go to work and try and catch 3 fish, and then we'll upgrade from there. We ended up with a limit of 3. We had, our biggest was 293, which was the first fish of the morning, about midway out from the weeds. The current was flowing pretty good. The tide had pulled, and so we were kind of in a dead water situation of where we didn't know where to go. And I actually asked my dad, I said, hey, let's go back to where we caught that fish yesterday afternoon, and let's see if we can't pick one up off the Thule line. So we ran there, and where we wanted to fish, there wasn't, and the run for us in the areas that we caught these fish weren't very far apart. So first day we ran a lot, second day we didn't run a whole lot. So we ran to that spot. There was another guy in the spot we wanted. We turned around, we started coming down these sparse Thules with some weed flats in between them, and on one of the last berms, I remember I made a cast, and I purposely made the cast away from the Thules so that the current could drag the frog to the shade line. And I've done this numerous times, and this time I actually turned to look away, and I heard the explosion, and it ended up being a 493. So we culled the barely 13-inch fish that we had, and the day just got better from there. I relaxed, my dad relaxed, and we were able to kind of just laugh and joke because I felt more confident. We had just about 10 pounds. We fished the main river a little bit, and then we decided, you know, we're gonna head up to this other area, and we were gonna go around the island to another Thule berm that we had fished the night before and try and kind of do the same thing. And there ended up being someone on it. So there's another Thule berm in the main river that we've fished a ton of times, and there's been 2 fish caught off of it now. The first fish was an 803, and this next fish is, and will probably be my PB for a while. It was a 787. So we pull up to the Thule berm and start fishing down it, and we're kind of making jokes with each other. All we need is another 6-pounder. We just need a 6-pounder to put us further up the board. And I remember making the cast, and it's a actual slot in the tules that goes through to the main river, and there's current coming through it. And I popped the frog one time, and for the life of me I can't remember the way the fish exploded on it, but it was kind of a sloshing kind of toilet bowl effect. And I set the hook, and when I set the hook on the fish, it dug and then came straight up out of the water. And when we both saw the fish, it kind of went into just panic mode for me, because I knew I had this big fish, and I knew she was in the tules, and I needed to get her away from him as fast as I could, not knowing how good she was hooked. She was hooked really good. We weren't really in any danger of losing her. When she actually dug and hooked the tules, and she was coming out of it, so the line kind of wrapped down and around. Worst thing for a frog is to get slack in the line, and we're fighting her, and we're actually taking the boat in, trying to get in there for her, and the line popped. My rod went limp, and I kept cranking, and I could see my line moving, and so I knew she still was on there. And I finally caught up to her, and everything kind of relaxed again, even though we were still panicked trying to get her around the motor to get her to deeper water to then play her, fight her, or bring her up the way that we wanted to do it on our terms. And luckily everything worked out. It went as smoothly as something like that can. She came up, she tail walked, she hit the water again, she dug, and then she came up, and I couldn't see her anymore. My dad kneeled down in front of me so that he could net her, and I just leaned back and I could hear her hit the rubber on the net, and it was just laughs, jokes, hugs, high fives. It was awesome. It was probably one of the most memorable fish catches ever, especially doing a tournament and to have a new PB be broke. I'll throw up, you guys will see this fish. It's pulled a 145 out of our limit and put us even further up in there. We had about 15 or so pounds, probably a little bit more than that, with her in the limit, and we just kind of kept doing what we were doing. We went to another place on the river that had current moving down, and we fished that. And my dad had always been kind of telling me, he was like, you know, I really want to go to Potato. I want to go to Potato Slough. I want to try and go back to the areas that we were fishing before. I said, okay, no big deal. I think we had about an hour left until we needed to be in, and so we ran up Potato, and we came upon an area that I told him, I said, you know what, let's just go fish this area. We were fishing kind of a weird tule flat. So let's just move up to the next one. There's more current on it, it's sparse tules, and it's deep water. So we move up to the next one, and I'm on the front of the boat, he's on the back, and he had not caught a fish all day. He's been struggling with these little fish slapping his bait around, and everything kind of came to fruition. He threw his frog up there, he stopped it, and the fight ensued. Fish came up, just inhaled his frog, and I was scrambling for the net. Ended up being a 515, and so we had 2 5-pounders and almost 8-pounder to go in with the biggest bag brought in between pros and amateurs. For a 17-pound, well, 1794 was what we ended up with, and that was good enough for this. We got first place in the AM division with 23.39, and we just, I mean, I don't even know what to say. I'm super thankful. We're blessed to have been able to have the opportunity to catch the fish that we did, and to turn a day around like that. I mean, we literally turned our tournament around from being 34th in the standings to winning the whole thing. There's not a feeling like it. And it was awesome because we literally had been talking about a guy that almost won it, and he blanked the first day a couple years ago, and he came in with 19 pounds the next day. So we got back to the weigh-in and just kind of sat there. We were one of the first boats to weigh in, so we had to sit there through everybody, and it was kind of crazy. The pro winners actually brought in 17.45 for their day, and so we just kind of went through our motions, hoping that everything was going to work out. When they called that the second place team was a 21:58, I think, everything kind of just, the emotions, everything took over, and it was awesome. Yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions, we ended up with second big fish for the entire tournament with a 787, a 903, I think is what it was what took the big fish. That was caught on the first day by another amateur. I think there was 70 something boats on our side, and there was 100 boats on the other. So it's split obviously, but it feels good. And I really want to thank my dad and everybody else that watched this video, and that he was able to fish with me, and we were able to get our first win together, and especially doing it in a frog tournament. If you guys like this kind of video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and catch you in the next one.